Welcome to Comic Book Corner. I'm Dan Dillatore. Thanks for joining us tonight. I thought, well, we could start our segment this way, that let's have an update on my good friend Phil Cowan. Phil Cowan is a legendary radio broadcaster in the Sacramento, California area, and he's since retired, and he's now putting his toe in the water regarding comic book purchases, and he's approaching very cautiously. We're friends, and he's been texting me back and forth regarding pictures and questions about this and that. He recently sent me this picture here. Actually, this isn't the exact picture, but something very similar to it. Take a good look at that picture. Ian, can you blow that up? And you'll see exactly why I told him not to buy that particular comic. That is a PGX slab, and we all know what that means. So I explained to Phil what the problems are with PGX and gave him a quick little breakdown regarding why that's cheaper and why there is suspicion with this particular slab in this particular company. And it's a good segue into the bombshell that was dropped on all of us Wednesday before last, and that is the bombshell from the company called CGC Grading Company, also known as Certified Guaranteed Company. That's PGX. So PGX has that reputation. By the way, I'm stunned that PGX is still in business after what they allegedly did, and apparently there are a lot of things they allegedly did.
What did they do? What did they do?
Well, apparently there was some shenanigans with their grading, and they did this, and they allegedly profited for this. It's a long story, but we in the comic community are very, very particular. And if we lose your trust, we don't go to your service or products or buy your comics anymore. PGX never really cleaned up that reputation, to my understanding. They still have this reputation to this day of not being a reliable source. But one source that was reliable, and this is the breaking news of Wednesday before last, was what CGC's statement made regarding what they are going to do, how are they going to grade, and what they're going to put on their cover. To set up the context of all this, let's do a little background check. CGC started in the year 2000, and they had a very, very good idea to professionally grade a comic, put it in a plexiglass a plastic slab, and with a label describing exactly what was in it. Like any company, it started rather slow, but the idea caught on. Before CGC, all you had to rely on was a book called Overstreet. And Overstreet had a little reference regarding how you grade your book, what to look for, and so forth. But it was still up to the individual and up to the comic shop or the con that you went to, and you had to haggle out what the comic was actually worth. CGC, by being very methodical, very careful, and very exacting, they started to produce a very, very quality product that people could count on. They were so good, they became the standard bearer regarding what comics were what they should be rated at, what their price structure is. They even had a special section for special collections, which I call their platinum collection. They were it. Of course, two other companies started out, the aforementioned PGX and another company called CGC. But they never caught up to CGC because CGC, again, had their act together. They were winning over, again, a very selective group, which was a comic collecting group, and they were experiencing success like you can't believe. The problems, however, started with this company a number of years ago when they were suffering for what many successful companies go through, and that's growing pains. They became too successful. And what they were doing was they were overworking their employees, most likely, and this is all speculation on my part, but no matter what they did, they started to make mistakes, and the mistakes began to be noticed by the comic community that was trusting them, and questions and doubts started to happen. So with these growing pains, I had contacted CGC about 3 years ago or so, maybe 4 years ago, and I said, because they're in Florida, and I said, why don't you guys expand? Why don't you come out to the West Coast or the Midwest or even in Canada? Because there's such a market for this. They refused. They want to stay right in their location in Florida, and that was the decision at the time. Well, if you remember last year, there was a company called Blackstone, and Blackstone is an investment company. And what they did was they saw value and an investment opportunity in CGC, and they gave them $500 million, With this $500 million cash influx, we all thought, good, CGC now has the cash to do what they're going to do. And I was hoping they would do, as I mentioned, expand, because the old adage in any company is expand or die. They didn't really do that. What they did was they apparently bought a larger building that was either next door to what they'd already, to their original location, or somewhere nearby. They hired more people. I don't think that these people were all that qualified. They should have been looking for someone like anyone on this particular panel here, because we all know what to look for, but they didn't do that. Now, I bring this up because Blackstone is not a small company. They are a hedge fund, if I understand it correctly. And if they're putting that much money into a company like CGC, they want a return. They probably would want 3 to 4 times what they put into it at least. And I'm wondering what influence they had in this particular decision to scale back the way they did. Because again, we don't know what contracts were signed, what agreements were made between Blackstone and CGC. Is this, and again, this is idle speculation on my part, did they cater to a larger audience? Because their statement referred to selective groups that worked with CGC regarding making this decision. Is it an intentional idea to bankrupt the market? Or because think about it, Blackstone is a huge multi-billion-dollar company. If they're making money elsewhere and they lose money in this particular venture, it looks good on their taxes. They don't have to pay taxes on the money that they're making elsewhere. So who knows? There's all sorts of rumors and speculation. I'm just stunned as to the decision making of CGC. This was such a breaking story. This Wednesday before last, journos, comic book kingpins, Swagglehoss, and a few others. All the big hitters in the comic book community on YouTube all had emergency breaking news stories to talk about this. This is going to be such a downturn. I think this is going to backfire in such a way where I don't know what the future is for that particular company, because by changing the way that they describe their comics, basically you can't trust what's in it. Now, as a customer myself, and I do subscribe to CGC to get the Graders notes, I've been on the fence for the longest time. Where do I send my comics? I have a substantial amount of raw comics, very expensive comics. CGC would have been my first choice. Now, after this decision, there is no way in hell that I'm sending anything to that company. And in addition, I am now, since I have the access to the Graders notes, which they are apparently giving away, and by the way, it's not for free. Two Brothers Comics, shout out to them. They did a profile on their channel as well. They did a little ghost membership to see if someone free, because they have a free membership, a $25 membership per year. That's what I joined. And then they got, I think, $150 for their premium service. They did a ghost membership for free to see if you can gain access to the Graders notes. No, you can't. You have to pay money to get these Graders notes. Now, if as I said, I'm not sending any comics to CGC moving forward, and I'm also making the decision not to buy any comics from CGC that was made and produced in the year 2022. Why? I don't trust them. I don't trust that anymore. And again, the comic community is a very, how do you say, if you lose trust, if you lose faith in a company or an individual, you don't trust that company or individual anymore. And I think CGC has done the stupidest thing they possibly can. What's going to happen moving forward, I don't know. I'm also old enough to know that, and I said this the first time I was on a show, another show I'm going to shout out, the Newbie Show. I said, you never want to rely on one company and one company alone to rely on your products or services, because if something happens to that company, what do? We now find ourselves in that situation, because think of how interwoven CGC has interwoven itself to the entire comic market. Shows like Comic Tom, another show I'll shout out. They measure everything by CGC standards, not by raw standards, because again, CGC used to be something that was relied upon, no longer. So what will happen moving forward, I don't know. What do you do if you're going to send in raw comics? There are two companies. Well, probably the logical choice at this point is a very reliable company called CBCS, and we all know about them. Oh, I put this logo here because I hate to say this. I never thought I'd hear myself say this. I'm putting CGC in the same category as PGX. They've lost my trust. They've lost my business. I will probably maintain the membership, because I have to find out from the Graders notes, now that they're accessible by a fee, if when the slab was made, if I'm making any purchases moving forward, and so forth. But this is a horrible decision. I hope they make a change of heart. I don't see that, though, but we'll see what happens moving forward. But in the meantime, what do you do? CBCS has been in second place, if you will, with the slab market, but a very, very distant second. This company and another one, EGS, are probably the logical choices to make this is a golden opportunity for them to make a substantial push into that particular market now that CGC is going to the wayside. I like CBCS. I like their third generation slab. They're absolutely outstanding. I think they need to work on their label. Other than that, they have a very quality product, but more importantly, you can trust it. Now, I bring up EGS because this is a gentleman by the name of Tony Trombrata who owns that company. He's in a number of chats. He's out in the open with all of us. He's easily accessible. That's who you want to see, someone who wants to win your trust, win your business. I love his, I love the logos are just dynamite that he has, but I love his grading system. He grades very old school, very much like the the aforementioned Overstreet price guide. He's very, very tough, and I want something that's very tough. I don't want to be lenient. I want to see if the comic is a 1.8, it's a 1.8, but at least I can count on that being a substantial and solid grade, something I used to trust with CGC, but no longer. So those are my personal companies that I'm recommending. There are a few others. I'm not going to mention them today because I don't know anything about them. But I wanted to give a shout out to those two companies moving forward. This is going to be an ongoing story. This was such a bombshell. I don't know how bad this is going to be. And given how bad the economy is, how expensive everything is, this is the last thing we needed. CGC, if you're listening to this broadcast, you need to reverse course immediately. Don't even take no for an answer, or give a more detailed explanation as to why you are doing what you're doing, because you are losing faith in a very, very substantial and very selective group, the comic book community. All right, let's move on to our picks of the week. I love this little logo here. We're going to dress this up. I found this in my searches preparing for the show, so this will be my little icon moving forward for picks of the week. This will be an ongoing segment within a segment, and we'll start right here. The Fantastic Four book 245 here to the left. That's the first appearance of the adult Franklin Richards, rather, and it's a hot book. It's heavily speculated on right now, but to the right is a book that no one seems to be talking about, and that is Fantastic Four 141. Now, this is sort of 2 in 1 because another character that's sort of hot right now is the character Annihilus from the Negative Zone. In issue 141, Annihilus kidnaps Franklin Richards, beams him with some sort of energy that activates his powers, and that is, I believe, the beginnings of the activation of the powers of Franklin Richards. I think you should get your hands on this immediately. It's still extremely reasonable, because it's a much older book. As you can see, it's a 20-cent book, which I still say the 20-cent book is the Silver Age, is the end of the Silver Age. But that is the beginnings of something big. You have two very prominent characters all in one in that one book, Fantastic Four 141. I would definitely get your hands on that as soon as possible. Moving on, what do we have here, Ian? Oh, two classics here. These are currently, this is Hulk 128 and 131. Both gorgeous covers here. They're roughly in the $40 range, but as I said, the economy is really shaky, and we're going into a very, very difficult time. Recession is right around the corner. The inflation is still out of control, which is why we're seeing, in part, comic book prices coming down. These are some of the ones that I profile throughout this show and other episodes you should keep your eye on, because you will find better deals as time goes on. 128 is Avengers versus the Hulk. Now, you can see in this particular issue, there's no Iron Man and no Thor dealing with the Hulk, which leads to Hulk 131. General Ross, who called the Avengers to help him stop the Hulk, he was disappointed with the regiment that showed up, so Iron Man himself shows up. But look at, I would buy the 131 just for the cover itself. That is a classic Iron Man armor facing the Hulk. It is an absolutely gorgeous cover. Very reasonable. I have some of these in very, very high grade. These are definitely Silver Age books, and books definitely keep an eye on. Moving on, what else do we have, Ian? We have, any of the Thor runs, especially the ones with Jack Kirby, you should keep an eye on at all costs. I'm looking at this one here, Thor 128. I saw it on eBay, and I'm sort of in a bid right now. I probably won't win it, but still the prices are reasonable. If you can get a decent low to mid-grade copy, and don't be afraid to get a low-grade copy. Those are unloved, unappreciated, but if you get it, you can get it for a very, very reasonable price, and you can say you have that particular issue in your collection. Most of my collection is low to mid-grade. I didn't go for the 9/8 or the high grades. If I got one, great. But I wanted to say, yes, I have that cover, I have the story, and you can't go wrong with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. To the right is Hulk 135. Now that Kang is sort of off the radar for the moment, and I was fully expecting him to be in the Doctor Strange movie, that particular issue of 135 is something that Kang introduces called the Time Storm. Now, at the end of episode 6 of Loki, we saw what would easily be described as a time storm, as time expands out into infinity in multiple directions. That is a book that may gain some traction once they bring the Kang story back, which there may be a reference in this new Thor movie, because I saw a poster of the Thor movie, a variant poster, and Loki appears on that poster. And if Loki is appearing on the poster, there will be a reference to Kang and what he has gone through in his own show, The Loki Show. So keep your eyes peeled for the Hulk 135. Next up, we have, speaking of the negative zone, this is the first appearance of a character called Blastar. Now, Blastar worked usually side by side or in association with Annihilus. This is his first appearance, Fantastic Four 62. Any of the issues 1 through maybe 150 or so, Fantastic Four, just dynamite. You can't go wrong with any of these. But this is, yet again, a book that no one's really talking about. If Annihilus does show up at some point, and everything points to him showing up, this character will be probably not too far away. I love that red cover. All the red covers are gorgeous. Keep your eyes on this one as well, and you can get it for a pretty reasonable price. I think we want to go now to the upcoming She-Hulk movie, or She-Hulk show, by the way. I think everyone can agree that this is going to be a fun show. I think they're going to be semi-lighthearted. I don't think they're going to take this very seriously. It can still be a very entertaining show to say the least. But here's the one thing I don't want to do. There's one character that we all know and love called MODOK. MODOK was, I believe he started in Tales of Suspense, an Iron Man character. He was a giant brain, basically, extreme intelligence, and a very serious character and deadly character. But of late, they've sort of made him kind of a joke, which is sad because he was a very prominent character and he had a great future. But for whatever reason, that character went to the wayside. And once he became this running joke, he never really came back. And the She-Hulk series is apparently supposed to bring this particular group here, the group called the Wrecking Crew. Now, the Wrecking Crew started in Defenders 17, 18, and 19. But this was an outstanding group. They were certainly on par with the Defenders, a very, very powerful team at the time. What I hope that they don't do is make this too comedic and make them kind of a laughingstock or sort of a joke like they did with MODOK. They can be a very serious team. They're a powerful team. Certainly the Wrecker himself he has mystical power from the Norn Queen. So that's not a small element of power. And there is, I love the super villain groups as much as I do the superhero groups, especially if they're interesting. To the left, I forgot the gentleman's name. He is a gamma ray professor. He was called the Black Bruce Banner, and forgive me, I forget his name, but that whole chemistry was a fun group and a fun storyline. And again, I hope they do it justice and not, be too comedic with this group. The She-Hulk character herself, by the way, I think she's just a dynamite character. I think she's going to be around for a long, long time. In the next episode, guys, I think what we'll do is continue on with this EGS story, because that is going to be, I'm not certain how bad it's going to be. I'm not certain how it's going to affect the market. I don't think it's going to be good. There's nothing positive I can think about it. So we'll do a follow-up on that episode and whatever else comes up. Everyone, thanks for joining for the Ian Hoodrat Network. I'm Dan De La Torre, and this is Comic Book Corner.